This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, y'all, we want to welcome you back to another episode of the Field Note Fridays powered by Yamaha. And we got our man Josh Honeycutt on here again to talk deer hunting, whitetail activity report in his neck of the woods. So, Josh, welcome back to the podcast, man.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I always love getting to talk deer with you. And so, we talked earlier, right about the start of deer season. Things were kind of lackluster for, lack of better terms. We had acorns hitting the ground, hot weather, things just weren't right. And so now it's that first week of December, first week and a half, 2 weeks of December. So tell us, give us a little update on what the deer are doing in your area, man, and how you're hunting them right now.
Yeah, so I live in Kentucky. That's where I hunt most. I also hunt in Ohio and Tennessee, just about pretty much across those 3 states right now. It's obviously post-rut. There's a little bit of rutting activity going on in eastern Tennessee, but otherwise, it's definitely post-rut. If you're in areas where there are some, higher doe populations, maybe that buck to doe ratio is a little more skewed. Maybe it's 1 to 3 or 1 to 4. Biologically impossible to be worse than 1 to 5, but despite a lot of the myths that you read out there. But if it's not 1 to 1, 1 to 2, if it's like 1 to 3.5, 1 to 4, you might have some does that were missed. It's really a lot more uncommon for does to be missed than people think. But that it can happen. Obviously now in some of the areas with really good habitat, you might start to see some doe fawns enter estrus for the first time. I think in the Midwest, in really good crop country, about 50% is kind of the peak, the highest percentage that will end up doing so. Obviously, if you're down in Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, it might be a lower percentage. I'm not sure exactly where it is in those 3 states, but it's definitely going to be somewhere under 50%. So that's a possibility. But now it's definitely the late season. We want to focus on those late season bed to feed patterns, find the best food, find the late season bedding areas that's going to be targeted most by deer during the late season, which is going to be in colder climates, solar cover and thermal cover. And then find, areas that deer haven't been pressured because it's been a long season already. And so they're trying to find reprieve from that as well.
Okay. Now, back up just a second. Touch on that solar cover and thermal cover that you're talking about there for a quick second. Explain that to the folks.
Yeah, so those are 2 different types of bedding cover that deer really, in colder climates, again, if you're in the South, it's not going to be as necessary. Even the Mid-South, maybe not so much, but definitely up in Ohio where you kind of get into a little bit colder climates, more snow. Solar cover and thermal cover are really going to be important for whitetails. Solar cover is based on sunlight. It's basically south-facing slopes. South-facing slopes receive more sunlight in winter, and so deer are going to be more likely to bed, even feed on those, especially early in the morning. They're trying to get that first rays of sunlight. So solar cover is really important for deer in colder climates. So is thermal cover. It also offers shelter from the elements, but it's in a different manner. These are generally stands of densely packed conifers, such as cedars, spruce, pines. These offer more overhead shelter from wind, from snow, from rain, and it's oftentimes even a few degrees warmer in a dense stand of these evergreens versus hardwoods. So if you have a property or public land that you're hunting, find those areas that offer that solar and thermal cover. And that's where deer are going to be more likely to frequent during the late season if it's not already been pressured too much.
Gotcha. So out there in Kentucky, it sounds like your deer are pretty much done rutting. Are you seeing any kind of secondary rut action or, some of these does that are coming to heat late, bucks are picking them up at all? Are you seeing that or?
Yeah, so there's a little bit of that going on. One property I hunt, it's actually the same property that I shot my Kentucky buck on back on November 22nd. It's a lot of CRP, but I was taking another young hunter who's never gotten a deer before, and I've been trying to help him get his first deer. And we actually saw last Saturday, we were out there hunting, and we actually saw one of our big mature bucks that was bedded down with a doe, had her locked down, and that would have been, I think it would have been on December the 3rd. Okay. So, so there's obviously some late rut activity going on. It was a mature doe as well, a fairly mature. It looked like it was probably a 1.5 old doe. And sometimes those 1.5 old does will come into estrus a little later than some of the more mature does. But I think you're obviously going to see some of that. Obviously, doe fawns, a percentage of those will start to enter estrus as well. Usually, though, those doe fawns don't really, in my experience anyway, don't start to really come into estrus until late December on into January. So right now, I'd say for the next couple of weeks anyway, if you do see any kind of rutting activity, it's probably going to be an adult doe that was missed during the first cycle.
Okay. So let's talk to that guy that, he's been struggling all season and he's finally getting another opportunity to go out here right before Christmas. What kind of last minute advice do you have for him, in regards to trying to bag that, last minute target buck right now out in your area?
Yeah, like I said before, it definitely focus on the best quality food. Deer are going to be hitting those food sources hard. But the big thing this time of year, especially if you're past gun seasons where you hunt and stuff like that, which most states are either past that or in the midst of it, definitely seek out places where deer weren't pressured as much. I'm seeing that both just driving down the road, because I live on a road here where there's deer everywhere. And so like just driving down the road here, I can tell it's past gun season because the deer just aren't where the deer hunters are. And so a lot of the hunting on my road, you can see where these hunters are hunting from the road. Like I'd be, during gun season, would drive down the road and I would see hunter orange, from the truck on the county road here. Mm-hmm. And before gun season, I would see a lot of deer activity in those areas. And that's why the gun hunters were there. But now I'm starting to see all the deer activity still during daylight, but nowhere near where those hunters were that I could see from the roads. So it's just kind of a anecdotal, back of the napkin type example of how deer hunting pressure can impact. I know that's a big Brian Murphy term, back of the napkin. So.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I just that's a shout out to our good man there.
Yep.
But no. So it's just one of those things where I love to look at stuff like that. But yeah, definitely pressure is impacting deer now. So find those pockets of ground that deer feel secure. If you hunt like a couple 100 acres and say you've been focusing on 100 acres of that, maybe give those other 100 acres a shot. You might not think they're as good, but come late season, if deer haven't been getting pressured there, it might be exactly where they're at. So focus on those spots that have received less pressure. Again, focus on food. That's king now. But I think one thing that definitely goes overlooked in this time of year is make sure your access routes are the best they've been yet, because you don't have that visual cover that you've had throughout much of September, October, and even parts of November. There's very little shield cover access, screening available now in terms of foliage. So you've got to get really creative on your entry routes, your exit routes, so that you're not pressuring those deer even further. Because a deer can see you coming from 1,000 yards away if it's open terrain and you're not using good access.
Got it. Well, man, I know there's going to be somebody out there that definitely heeds your advice and goes out there and bags themselves a big buck. So, man, Josh, thank you again for hopping on the podcast with us today on Field Note Fridays, powered by Yamaha, to talk whitetail activity reports, man.
Thank you. As always, it's fun.
Heck yeah, man. Until the next time.